The Emperor of Excess, Bokassa's reign of terror, plunder, and cannibalism. Hey, darkness dwellers and seekers of history's most twisted tales. What if a man, born into obscurity, clawed his way to absolute power, then crowned himself emperor in a ceremony so lavish it bankrupted his starving nation? What if the whispers of his cruelty weren't just rumors, but chilling truths of torture, murder, and even cannibalism? Today, we're tearing open the astonishing, often sickening, saga of Jean-Bédel Bokassa, the self-proclaimed emperor of the Central African Empire. We'll expose the plots that put him on the throne, the staggering wealth he plundered, the horrifying atrocities he unleashed, and the bizarre, almost unbelievable, details of his reign. This isn't just history. It's a raw, unfiltered journey into the heart of a regime that captured a nation and then bled it dry, leaving a legacy of terror and unanswered questions. Get ready, because the true story of Bokassa is a relentless tale of ambition, madness, and a darkness that still haunts a continent. Our story begins not in a palace, but in the remote village of Bangui, French Equatorial Africa, where Jean-Bédel Bokassa was born in 1921. His early life was shaped by colonial rule. He joined the French army in 1939, distinguishing himself in conflicts like the brutal Indochina War. He was a decorated soldier, rising to the rank of captain by 1961, a man of military discipline and ambition. Upon his return to the newly independent Central African Republic, CAR, his cousin, President David Dacko, appointed him commander-in-chief of the nascent National Army. Bokassa quickly rose through the ranks, becoming the army's first colonel in 1964. But beneath the facade of military loyalty, a ruthless ambition simmered. Dacko's government was plagued by corruption and economic stagnation, and its borders were porous to rebels. Bokassa, ever the opportunist, saw his chance. The plot was meticulously planned. On New Year's Eve, December 31, 1965, as the nation celebrated, Bokassa launched the Saint Sylvestre coup d'état. He claimed it was to save the country from communism, a convenient pretext for his personal power grab. In a swift, almost bloodless takeover, Dacko was arrested and forced to resign. By January 1, 1966, Bokassa declared himself president of the Republic, immediately abolishing the constitution, dissolving the legislature, and allowing no opposition. He ruled by decree, consolidating absolute power. His initial struggle for international recognition soon faded as he cut diplomatic ties with China and gained support from other African nations, and crucially, from France, the former colonial power, who saw him as a strongman who could protect their diamond and uranium interests. The stage was set for a reign unlike any other, one that would plunge his impoverished nation into a nightmare of excess and terror. Having seized power, Bokassa's ambition knew no bounds. In 1972, he proclaimed himself president for life. But even that wasn't enough. He yearned for something grander, something that would etch his name into history alongside the emperors of old. On December 4, 1976, he declared the Central African Republic an empire, and himself its emperor, Bokassa I. The ultimate spectacle of his megalomania came on December 4, 1977, his imperial coronation. This wasn't just a ceremony. It was a grotesque, lavish imitation of Napoleon Bonaparte's coronation, staged in one of the poorest countries in the world. The cost was staggering, over $20 million, an amount that represented a third of the CAR's entire annual budget and consumed every penny of France's foreign aid for that year. The details of the coronation were almost unbelievable. Bokassa sat on a colossal, 2-ton gilded bronze eagle throne, costing $2.5 million. His crown, inlaid with diamonds, including an 80-carat centerpiece, was another $2.5 million. His empress, Catherine, wore a dress adorned with 935,000 metallic glitters, costing over $72,000. He imported 60 Mercedes-Benz cars, 130 horses from Belgium, and spent fortunes on champagne, fireworks, and a personal imperial guard. While his people suffered from widespread poverty, with 2/3 needing humanitarian aid, Bokassa personally administered the nation's diamond trade, siphoning off most of the profits for his own extravagant lifestyle. And the excess wasn't just public. Bokassa maintained a vast harem of 19 wives, reportedly siring 50 children, despite his conversion to Catholicism. Whispers of his towering rages and unpredictable outbursts of sentimentality were common, painting a picture of a man whose grip on reality was as tenuous as his nation's economy. This grotesque display of wealth, built on the backs of a starving populace, fueled international outrage and solidified his image as a delusional tyrant. Beneath the glittering facade of his imperial court lay a chilling reality of brutal authoritarianism and widespread human rights abuses. Bokassa's rule was marked by the systematic torture and killing of political opponents. His prisons became chambers of horror, where dissent was met with unspeakable cruelty. But the most infamous and truly sickening atrocity of his reign was the 1979 schoolchildren massacre. In January 1979, Bokassa tried to force all students to wear expensive uniforms made by a factory reportedly owned by one of his wives. The students, many from impoverished families, protested. The protests escalated, and by April, students and police were practically in a state of war. In mid-April, after students reportedly stripped plainclothes police officers who tried to infiltrate a meeting, mass arrests began. At least 100 students were rounded up and taken to Ngaragba prison. What happened next became the stuff of nightmares. Several survivors later testified that on the night of April 19, 1979, Bokassa himself visited the prison. He screamed at the children for their insolence, then, in a horrifying display of personal brutality, ordered the prison guards to club the children to death. Witnesses claimed Bokassa personally participated, smashing the skulls of at least 5 children with his ebony walking stick. Some students survived only by pretending to be dead amidst the carnage. This act of unimaginable cruelty, targeting innocent children, sent shockwaves across the globe and led to international condemnation, with foreign governments cutting off aid. And then, there were the cannibalism allegations. These were perhaps the most lurid and persistent rumors surrounding Bokassa. While he vehemently denied them, the evidence and testimonies were chilling. His former president, David Dacko, testified in court that he had seen photographs of butchered bodies hanging in the cold storage rooms of Bokassa's palace immediately after the 1979 coup. The French magazine Paris Match even published photographs allegedly showing a fridge in the palace that contained the bodies of schoolchildren. Most disturbingly, Bokassa's former chef was called to testify, claiming he had cooked human flesh stored in the palace's walk-in freezers and served it to Bokassa on an occasional basis. There were even unexamined rumors that Bokassa had served some of the flesh of his victims to unsuspecting foreign dignitaries. Bokassa himself reportedly made chilling comments, once remarking that his grandfather had been a cannibal and that he sometimes believed he had similar tendencies. On another occasion, he allegedly laughed at a palace dinner, wondering aloud if his ambassadorial guests were dining on human parts. These horrifying tales, whether fully substantiated or exaggerated by fear and political enemies, cemented Bokassa's image as a monster of unparalleled depravity. The schoolchildren massacre proved to be the final straw. International condemnation was swift and severe, with foreign governments cutting off aid. France, his former colonial patron, could no longer tolerate his excesses. In September 1979, French paratroops carried out a military coup, code-named Operation Barracuda, overthrowing Bokassa and reinstating David Dacko as president. Bokassa fled into exile, first to Côte d'Ivoire, then eventually settling in France. For 7 years, he lived in exile, a deposed emperor. But then, in a move that baffled the world, Bokassa inexplicably chose to return to the Central African Republic on October 24, 1986. He was immediately arrested upon stepping off the plane in Bangui. This unexpected return meant he had to be tried in person, granting him the benefit of defense counsel. His trial began on December 15, 1986, at the Palace of Justice in Bangui. It was an unprecedented event in post-colonial African history. A former head of state tried by a jury, with public access and live broadcasts across the country and neighboring nations. Bokassa faced 14 different charges, including treason, murder, cannibalism, illegal use of property, assault, and embezzlement. Witnesses bravely came forward. They documented victims ranging from political enemies to a newborn son of a palace guard commander, allegedly poisoned on Bokassa's orders. The most damning testimonies came from the 27 teenagers and young adults who identified themselves as the only survivors of the school children massacre, recounting Bokassa's personal involvement in the brutal beatings. Throughout the trial, Bokassa denied all charges, attempting to shift blame to his former cabinet and army. "I'm not a saint. I'm just a man like everyone else," he declared, often erupting in rage, once shouting, "The aggravating thing about all this is that it's all about Bokassa, Bokassa, Bokassa. I have enough crimes leveled against me without you blaming me for all the murders of the last 21 years." On June 12, 1987, Bokassa was found guilty of murder in at least 20 cases and sentenced to death. The cannibalism charge, despite the chef's testimony, was not factored into the final verdict, as the consumption of human remains was classified as a misdemeanor under car law, and a general amnesty had been declared for all misdemeanors committed before the start of the new rule. His death sentence was later commuted to life in prison, then further reduced to 20 years. In a final, controversial twist, with the return of democracy to the car in 1993, Bokassa was released under a general amnesty. He lived a private life in Bangui until his death in November 1996. Astonishingly, in 2010, he was even posthumously rehabilitated by the car government, a move that sparked outrage and disbelief given his well-documented crimes. So, what are we to make of Jean-Bédel Bokassa, the decorated soldier who became a self-crowned emperor, a man whose name is synonymous with both grotesque excess and unspeakable cruelty? His story is a chilling testament to the corrupting influence of absolute power, a stark warning of what happens when ambition isn't tempered by morality or accountability. His legacy is one of profound contradiction. A military hero who became a brutal dictator, a man who spent millions on a crown while his people starved, and a figure whose alleged acts of cannibalism continue to haunt the collective memory. His reign left the Central African Republic deeply scarred, its economy plundered, and its people traumatized. The bizarre twists of his trial, his commuted sentence, and his eventual posthumous pardon only add layers of unsettling complexity to his already infamous tale. Bokassa's life forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. How do such figures rise to power? How can a nation grapple with such a dark past, and what does it mean when a monster is rehabilitated? His story is a powerful reminder that the echoes of tyranny can linger for generations, and that some legends, once born in blood and diamonds, simply refuse to die. What do you think about Jean-Bédel Bokassa's reign? Was he truly mad, or just utterly ruthless? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if this journey into the dark heart of a forgotten empire chilled you to the bone, hit that subscribe button. Because here, we're always unearthing the most scandalous, intriguing, and utterly vital stories that shape our world. See you in the next one.